the members know that they've declined the input
You have to put it. You
of
can't
an
enter
executive
orders.
officer. I need to put the A and the B.
Yes.
All those in, do you want the A and the B together, members?
Yes.
Yes.
A and the B together. Have no request for splitting it. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Kenny.
Members, we'll go to the next item.
Well done, Phil.
It's on page 41, members. It's the... Oh, sorry. No, we're going to item 11, the Hamilton to Auckland Corridor Plan first. Jacques, would you like to introduce Phil and the team?
Good afternoon. Yeah, if I can introduce Tyler at the end here. Tyler's going to discuss some of the engagement details we've been going through. We've got Svining Oi here, Ning, who's doing her first committee presentation. I think you know us too. So just a bit of context, there's a lot going on in the interregional space at the moment between Auckland and Waikato, a number of projects. We're going to focus on one of those today, which is the Hamilton to Auckland Corridor Study, a central government-led study, very much a new process. This is looked at as a demonstration project that's going to be rolled out in other parts of the country, and is very much I guess a work in progress in terms of progress. All the project partners are finding their feet. So we've got a brief presentation for you today, and then we can answer some questions. So I'll hand over to Ning.
Thank you. So a little bit of background on the Hamilton to Auckland Corridor Plan. It is a central government initiative that is currently led by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. There are two purposes to the project. The first is to develop an integrated spatial plan for the corridor from Hamilton to southern Auckland. And the second purpose is to establish an ongoing growth management partnership between central government, local government and iwi. The project aims to understand the potential growth opportunities along the corridor that can be unlocked by infrastructure investment, including rail. And the boundaries for the project are a little bit fluid, but essentially covers 5 kilometers on either side of the rail line from Hamilton to the southern Auckland growth area. It also takes into account the wider employment opportunities at Puhenui and Auckland Airport to the north, and Hamilton Airport and Cambridge to the south. The project is the initial focus of the spatial planning pillar of central government's urban growth agenda. The other 4 pillars are transport pricing, urban planning, infrastructure funding and financing, and legislative reform. So Auckland Council is one of the partners of the project alongside central government, various local government authorities along the corridor, as well as iwi. A process is currently underway to include other iwi who would like to be involved in the project. And at this point, I'd like to invite my colleague Ta'ala to step in and walk you through this process.
Kia ora koutou. So just looking at the slide, as was mentioned prior, MB, central government basically is as the lead party to this portfolio, the H2A portfolio or program. So what we've done is this slide really is not from Auckland Council. We've just simply taken what was from the terms of reference and we've put that up. So in its simplicity, there doesn't seem to be anything sinister or untoward towards the project partners and the relationships. But the challenges for council staff, perspective that we had was in terms of the iwi partners that are listed here, what was the process that was utilised to engage with those parties, and also looking at the absence of some of our iwi who this program actually impacts on in terms of the boundary areas. And so for this reason, as per paragraph 34 in the report, you'll see what we've done is we've put forward a proposal to the steering committee for this program, which has a recommendation as an option to try and provide a platform that enables transparent sort of involvement for our mana whenua and a more equal-based sort of discussion. The reason we've identified that as potential issues in the future is we just wanted to ensure that all the iwi were necessarily engaged at the right time, and we couldn't make the assumption that the iwi that had been listed have had the same conversation at the same time. And so just some of the feedback we've had from different parties is that some have been involved and some haven't. So based on that, that's why we've taken that position to put forward that recommendation, that option.
Thanks, Tala. Moving on, there are 3 deliverables for the project. The first is a joint integrated spatial plan for the corridor. The second being a growth management partnership framework, as well as a third deliverable, which is a refined list of transformative urban projects in the corridor that could potentially be accelerated through this process. There was a ministerial meeting in Wellington in June this year that was attended by the political representatives and senior leaders of the project partners. Auckland Council was represented by the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Darby, and Chief of Strategy Jim Quinn. And the meeting was an opportunity for project partner representatives to review and discuss the project's terms of reference, which we have tabled today for you to have a look at. And within the terms of reference, the project objectives, there's 4 of them. The first being to improve housing affordability and choice. The second, to enhance natural and built environments and the vitality of communities. The third, to improve access to employment, public services, and amenities. And the fourth, to create employment opportunities in the corridor itself. Last week, there was a 3-day inquiry by design workshop that was held in Tuakau to develop a draft integrated spatial plan for the corridor. So that's deliverable 1. Due to the complexity of the task and the tight timeframes, the project team is still finalizing the outputs from the workshop, but significant progress has been made to develop this draft spatial plan. And the following are some of the key messages from the workshop. And the first is that the project builds on the existing growth strategies within the corridor, such as the Auckland Plan 2050 and the Waikato Future Proof strategy. At the workshop, we looked at a variety of different growth scenarios for each of the settlement in the corridor, and whether there was potential for increased scale and pace of growth at particular locations. To support growth, significant investments in transport, water, wastewater, flood management, and social infrastructure is required. In particular, there is a need for good quality rapid transit connections throughout the entire corridor. At the workshop, we also heard about the significant natural constraints that limit urban growth along the corridor. But there are also opportunities for new funding, financing, and planning tools to accelerate some of the transformative urban projects identified for the corridor. Ultimately, the workshop highlighted that continued growth management partnership between Mana Whenua, central government, and local government is needed to give effect to the spatial plan. In terms of next steps, over the course of September, we will be refining and further testing the draft spatial plan with local boards and key stakeholders. There are 2 key dates after that. On the 19th of October, the proposed spatial plan, which is the first deliverable, will be presented to the governance group. The second key date is the 14th of December, when the draft partnership framework and the refined list of transformative urban projects will be presented to the governance group. At the moment, we still need to understand what the process is for project partners to get political sign-off for these deliverables. When we have something more definitive around these deliverables, we'll be presenting back to the committee to seek your endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ning. Anything further, Ed, Jacques or Phil, Ta'ala? All good?
No, we can just
we'll take questions on that now. Yeah. Members, are there questions on this paper and the presentation here today? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I just want to know what the benefits to Auckland are of us supporting growth, or even if we look at it I mean, I don't support growth outside Auckland's rural-urban boundary at all. And so I didn't think we did, because we have a unitary plan that says that. So, one, I want to know what would be the benefits for Auckland in even being part of this, beyond the $10,000 we've put in, which is fine. And the second question is, if there are any benefits, what's the expectation of Auckland ratepayers' contribution to any future projects that come out of this that aren't in our region? Are we expected to hold up other regions?
Thank you. John?
Councillor Cooper, so none of that is completely clear yet, because the process is still being worked on, and there is no draft spatial plan yet. But one can say that within the Auckland part of the corridor, we of course have our own greenfield areas, brownfield areas, and it may very well be that some of those areas that are along the rail line could benefit from some intervention by the partners to speed up some housing delivery. So say, for example, in Drury South, where the line would go through, that might be one of the benefits that Auckland gets out of this process. It is those transformational projects, I think is what they call them. Some of those might be in Auckland, and there may be other kinds of funding that comes with that, and that would be the benefit for us.
Just to add to that, the Deputy Mayor and I discussed this before we attended. We feel, because it does, the scope of it does come into our boundaries, being in the tent was more important than outside the tent, but we've been very clear that we wouldn't commit any funding until it was clear what the benefit was. So we just wanted to make sure we were able to be part of it. And there will be, the Deputy Mayor, as you know, already attends the boundary meetings anyway, so we already have relationships. There is no doubt that some of our growth is spilling that side, and we also need water, so there's a whole lots of complex bits here, as you know, but be sure we won't be committing funding until we're clear what the benefit is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Chair. A question for the officers, and perhaps one for you, because I'm not quite sure who to put it to, but my first question is, can I take for granted that the Southern Initiative is being involved in these discussions as well, or they've got some oversight or input as to what's happening? I know it might be early days yet, but I'd be keen to know what the TSI involvement is.
I'm happy to answer that now. No direct input yet, but Gail reports to me, and there's nothing yet that would involve them, but at the right time we would certainly bring them in.
Excellent. To the officers, sorry, there's three questions, and then the last one to you, Sue. In a presentation from Ben Ross, he talked about co-design and us showing a bit more leadership, or having a bit more emphasis or impetus in the project. I was wondering if you had a response to that, as to why you think he may have taken that particular view, and how we might get a bit more push behind what our involvement is.
Sorry, I missed Ben's presentation. The whole project is being driven as a partnership, and so one would assume that all partners are equal, and therefore one needs to behave in that manner. Whether we can take more leadership, we are certainly putting sufficient resources in there. It is taking up a lot of resources. But yeah, whether we can lead more, it does get hard when you're in a partnership. Everybody needs to play equally.
Cool, thank you. And so just finally, is I know that we have, and it was noted that the representatives that we had were yourself and the Deputy Mayor. I was just wondering if governance or the representation around this table was just sitting with you two, or was that open to others being involved as well? How I know that you probably don't want it to be an unwieldy committee, but I'm just asking if, I'm not interested in it myself, just asking if there was the possibility of others being involved in those discussions.
Thank you. Maybe I could answer that in the first instance, and welcome Deputy Mayor's input too. We were there at the invitation of 3 ministers. It was not something that we were privy to the structure of.
Right.
And when we were there, we identified some gaps in that representation. One of those was mana whenua representation. We also, core question is, it wasn't our meeting, we were invited to it. We also highlighted some gaps in the project scope, and maybe Ning, soon you can come to, was the project scope amended following our input?
Yeah, so I had a look at the terms of reference that was tabled at the ministerial meeting in June that you attended, and the subsequent terms of reference, and it looked like there was a much stronger environmental focus peppered throughout the entire terms of reference. The project objectives was, there was an additional one that was added, which involved creating employment opportunities within the corridor itself. There was also a stronger focus on giving project partners the necessary tools to, create to give effect to the opportunities that they've identified. I'm not sure. I think you made some comments around, having greater focus on the environment. I think that's been adopted. I'm not sure what other comments you made.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that lead-in. Can I ask the Deputy Mayor if he has anything to add?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, team. I think one of the other things we talked about was the quality of urban design and not just having sprawl in the Waikato as well, and also the financial limitations. So a lot of this is about is Auckland is not Fortress Auckland. We've got northern neighbours and we've got southern neighbours, and particularly our southern neighbours are growing as a percentage rapidly as we are and facing very similar challenges. And one of the things that the ministers have identified is a rapid rail connection between Hamilton and Auckland, or Auckland and Hamilton, which potentially would stop at Papakura in the first instance. And they're really advancing this type of thinking to, then you'd have the servicing towns between Hamilton and say Papakura, and what that would entail, and where some of the challenges are going to be is, what other infrastructure has to be provided to enable growth in those towns with the limited budgets the North Waikato Council and the Regional Council have. And there's no impetus at all that Auckland would help cross-subsidise the Waikato in any way or means. That's been made very, very clear. I think it's one of the first things that we said. We're happy to help participate. We're happy to help the expertise with our staff around the planning and the corridor, what is possible and what is not. And I think that's been well recognised by the Waikato people, saying they're really appreciative of the expertise that these fine people have actually led to the process. It is a work that is going to take a bit more time. There is a genuine feeling of warmth from Mayor Sanson and his councillors, and from the Regional Council, and indeed from Hamilton City Council, because they're seeing this is the first real tangible results of cross-border thinking and cross-border planning, and it is potentially going to be a good omen for the future. Not pretending it's going to be perfect, because there are some very real limitations, called the Waikato River, called wetlands, called hills, and challenging topography through that corridor. But it also, as Jacques has said, it could potentially help the fantastically large amount of growth that's happening in the south right now. And this corridor does lend itself potentially to open up some funding via the Crown along those areas to help with the south. But nothing's promised, nothing's written up yet. It's just a work continually to make sure it just evolves as it needs to evolve, and letting the minister drive some of the outcomes he is looking for, which is probably a good thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Collins?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Ta.
Member Namani?
Kia ora. I'm more interested in the mana whenua process aspect. What has been the process, or what will be the process for, I suppose, Auckland Council for identifying iwi, mana whenua? That's kind of one question. The other is, I think, knowing that the tribal lines are not defined by the Auckland Council and Waikato Regional Council boundary. So there are a number of iwi who actually traverse that line, have interest either side of that line. Joining up the process between Auckland Council and the Waikato Regional Council as it pertains to mana whenua engagement. Has that occurred?
Through the chair, kia ora, Member Ngamani, for your question. In short, it's hard to say whether that's occurred because goes to the point that Auckland Council is not the lead on this, and that's why we've had to submit through a recommendation of an iwi steering group that's at that level as part of it. But what we're intending for that to do is to allow all the iwi to self-determine their involvement and their interest in that space. But then really it's for then iwi through that forum to determine how they're involved and what their level of involvement is, in contrast to what we're currently working with, which is a structure that has already predetermined, but we're not sure what the grounds of that predetermination was. And
Well, again, because I do hear from Jacques talking partnership, and I hear from you saying we're not the lead, which I appreciate in, perhaps in a financial point of view, but in the space of mana whenua, I would think that my comfort level will have been clear of the process and clear of how one arrives at those mana whenua groups that want to be involved throughout the corridor.
Could I just add to that? And the team and Councillor Darby and Cashmore can correct me if I'm wrong. The stage we're at is defining the corridor and not a lot else at this point. When they get in, there will be nodes all the way through it, Pocono and Drury and other areas. I think, and certainly at the meeting we were at, we identified that the real work will be, because the needs of all of those areas on this corridor where transport is that connecting thing will be quite different. And I think some of those things are being, I think the iwi interest will be much more acerbic at that point. That's the assumption I made, at least, anyway, at the time. But there's a long way to go. This is very early days.
But my concern is the terms of reference locks in a certain approach that I don't even have information about to say that's legitimate or that's not legitimate. That's my dilemma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And that is actually the dilemma that we've felt as well in terms of that, especially because of the nature of our existing relationships with our Tamaki Makaurau iwi. And so but it's similar to what we're trying, that's why we're really pushing that we want the ability, like we have presented that option to the steering committee. They found it difficult to challenge what we'd put forward, but now they're in that process of grappling, working through what are those implications for the steering group committee, the existing one, and also for the overall program. But that hasn't changed the position that we as Auckland Council officers feel it necessitates that we stay with that and we keep pushing it. Because what our intention is that if we can enable some of those things, it does provide a mechanism for mana whenua to determine those things and to be just a lot more open and transparent. Not so much just with the partners, but also amongst each other in terms of that. And just some of the early feedback we have had from the existing parties who are listed, they're warmly supportive of what we've put through so far, but that's still in process.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll leave my comments to the comment stage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question on this. We haven't approved the scope ourselves. Do we need to approve the scope, Jacques? What's your view on that?
Councillor Darby, you could. I don't think there's any particular imperative that you approve it right now. But if you want to, one could do that. There will certainly be decisions that come to this committee further down the process when there are actually concrete things. For example, like a draft spatial plan and the things that flow from that. So that probably might be more appropriate, the thing you might want to support or adopt or...
Yep, okay. And just in terms of following on from the question of Councillor Fisser-Collins, do we also at this stage need to confirm by a resolution the representation to date has been at the invitation of the the Minister, of the Deputy Mayor and myself to go to the Tuakau session 19th of October, I think it is. Is there, would it be helpful to more formally confirm that representation?
It might be helpful for the committee.
That's what I'm
itself.
thinking, because ultimately there's going to be a paper back once this work is beyond scope and the various work streams get underway.
Yeah, the reason that the Deputy Mayor and you got invited is a structural thing. You are the Deputy Mayor and you are the Chair of the Planning Committee, and that's what the Minister based it on. But it might be that if the committee wishes to change that and maybe include another person or two, I'm sure one could approach the Minister on that, or the committee confirms that the two of you continue to be the... But it will be by invitation. That's kind of how it works.
And we should add, it's a really big group already, so just be clear, it is. By the time you take all the district councils in, and you needed a stadium to get them all in, so.
Yeah, okay, look, I just pose that for the members. We're probably the most represented council with the two of us. Others had one. So, look, if members are happy with the Deputy Mayor and myself going to the next, and we'll see a report out of that, I don't think we need to confirm it formally here today. Other questions?
I think if you're going to sort of enter into discussions along the way, somewhere along the way, I think the IMSB should be there, not to hold your hand and not to look over your shoulder, but to make sure that the Māori interests are being taken care of at every level.
And I can assure you at the very first hui we made the point that, you know, we became aware that there were a couple of mana whenua groups in the room, and then a lot that weren't. And that point's been reiterated by Member Ngāmani and Hanare here today. Okay, other questions, members? You happy to endorse the ongoing participation and...
Can you read out the motion?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Move.
I'll read it and then come to your speaking to Member Ngāmani.
No, I was just, oh, sorry.
Can you read it in Te Reo?
I'll move to do second, sorry, can I move and second, Deputy Mayor? Endorse the Auckland Council's ongoing participation as a partner in the Hamilton to Auckland Corridor Plan project, full stop. The B, endorse the Auckland Plan 2050 development strategy as the basis for staff input to the corridor plan. All good? And Member Ngāmani.
Yeah, look, kia ora, just briefly. I have a pretty decent handle personally on the tribal landscape of both the Waikato and Tāmaki region, and I have concerns at what's been prepared within the body of the report itself. It doesn't make sense to me. That's my first point, and I raise that concern. I'm not satisfied with the information as it pertains to how mana whenua and Tāmaki are going to be engaged, and that's simply because as you said, it's a work in progress, and until that occurs, I'm not comfortable to support this. That is not to say I don't support the concept generally of the initiative, but I don't. It's not good enough. The information provided to us around what has occurred with the mana whenua engagement is not good enough, and I want to wait until I get that information before I state a position around that. And my colleague feels the same. So that's pretty much where we sit on this. We won't be voting in support of this. We will be opposing it. We would have preferred to have a deferral for the information to come to us, and then we would have been able to make the decision, but that isn't the case, and so yes, Mr Chair, that's where we stand.
Thank you, appreciate that input. Councillor Cooper, please.
I was actually,
No.
I'd moved it, but it's okay.
Okay.
That's why my hand was up.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried.
Recorded.
Would the members like that to be recorded?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
And thank you. Record both.
And you
please.
want a favour next time, guys? You're not getting it.